Can you really find a magic formula to win board games? Does mathematics perhaps hold the clue to finding this golden strategy? In this video, I've done weeks of research, over 51 pages of notes, and I have the 7 most definitive advanced strategies, tips and pointers to win Ticket to Ride. Let's go check them out. Now, systems analysis is the tool that we're going to use to understand how the system operates and what is that center of gravity or that weakness that we're going to try and manipulate or exploit in our favor. The primary system is Ticket to Ride, the board game itself, but this can be broken down into multiple subsystems. Firstly, we have the destination cards, and these are super important and we'll go into them in more detail. Next up, we have the train tickets as well. And again, these multiple colors, and we'll go in and try and find, is there a way to actually exploit these? Next, we have those cities, or what we like to call the nodes. And finally, the networks between those nodes, those train routes. And again, trying to find, is there a weakness within the game? Finally, one of the most important subsystems that we don't talk about much is the human factor. So that is going to be yourself and of course, your opponents. So now that we understand the system, it's time to conduct that research. And firstly, one of my main things I looked at was the crazy amount of research that already existed through university studies. There's lots of theses, papers written about this very thing, Ticket to Ride. So a lot of this is based around the ideas of incorporating mathematics to find that golden strategy. These tips will lean heavily into all those mathematical papers I read and try to actually understand what is the main takeaway from all of that. Next, I also did some research on Reddit and also on BGG. Again, leveraging that knowledge of others to find if someone else out there has already found that missing clue to winning. Next, there's lots of tournaments out there on the internet, and watching these winners actually helped narrow down what strategies worked for them. And finally, we are in 2024. It's also time to utilize a bit of AI technology to help us, again, maybe just find what are the areas we need to look at. Now, I am going to assume you're already comfortable with the rules of Ticket to Ride, and in a way, you've already got your own strategies that work for you. I'm mostly going to be talking about the original USA version of the game, but the theory behind this video will also be accurate for Europe and all of those other offshoots. Our first subsystem is going to be destination tickets, and to understand how we can analyze this subsystem further, we're going to use some mathematical theories. Q, graph theory, which is just a branch of mathematics that deals with the study of properties of networks. In the context of Ticket to Ride, the game board can be represented as a graph with cities as nodes and vertices and tracks as edges or connections between them. Leveraging principles from graph theory will allow us to analyze the properties of this network of cities and tracks more effectively. So let's imagine you're playing Ticket to Ride and you have the option to claim either a short route connecting 2 nearby cities or a longer route spanning multiple regions on the map. While the shorter route may seem tempting for that immediate point gain, the longer route offers greater efficiency in terms of turns saved and points scored per train. By applying these principles from graph theory and prioritizing those longer tracks, you strategically invest in routes that not only maximize your points, but also expedite that end game. But what does this mean in simple to understand terms? Well, in USA, we have 30 destination tickets. Now, let's break every destination card into its shortest possible path. We have 28 destination cards that are going to equal 1 point per train used to complete that shortest path. Seems pretty balanced, but there's 2 destination cards that just doesn't fit this mathematics. Los Angeles to New York City has a point value of 21 points per value on that card when you complete it. Now the shortest length is going to be 16 train segments to complete that. So that's going to be a profitability of 1.31 points per segment. Remembering all of those other tickets are only going to be 1 point per segment. So the shortest path is going to be LA, Las Vegas, Salt Lake City, Denver, Kansas City, St. Louis, Pittsburgh, and New York City. So remembering that, so 1.31 per train played. Let's look at the other one. Los Angeles to Miami. This has a point value of 20 points on the ticket. Now the length, the amount of trains that we're going to need to run that shortest path is going to be 18 segments. So the profitability is 20 points by 18 segments, which is going to equal 1.11 points per segment. Now this doesn't seem like much, but it's a very small hack, and it just shows how mathematics can break down to see if there is a weakness in that game. So if you see either of those two cards, make sure you grab them. Go write that down. That's really good to know. Now, following on from maximum efficiency, let's also understand maximum effectiveness using graph theory. The common misconception is that connecting your tickets through the shortest possible route isn't always the best strategy. In fact, it often leads to scoring fewer points and taking more turns to achieve it. The game is all about the most effective use of your turns to maximize your points. Let's consider alternative routes that may be slightly longer but offer more points per train. In Ticket to Ride, there are often multiple ways to connect your cities on the game board. Now, graph theory helps you identify those alternative routes that may not be the shortest, but will offer you strategic advantages such as accessing key cities or, of course, maximizing your points. Suppose you have the destination ticket, Los Angeles to New York City. Well, we know the shortest path between LA and New York City may involve traversing through Chicago. How about looking for other options that offer maybe more maximum efficiency per turn? So let's look at it. LA, Phoenix, Denver, Omaha, Chicago, Pittsburgh, New York. That's going to be 34 points and it's going to take you 6 turns. So that's going to be 5.66 points per turn. Let's have a look at another alternative route. LA, Phoenix, Denver, Kansas City, St. Louis, Pittsburgh, New York. We're now looking at 35 points over 6 turns. We're now at 5.83 points per turn, so we're getting better. Now LA, El Paso, Oklahoma, Kansas, St. Louis, Pittsburgh, New York. We're now looking at 39 points over 6 turns, which is now 6.5 points per turn. So look, you think we've nailed this. I've got one other alternative for you. How about LA, San Fran, Helena, Duluth, Toronto, Montreal, and New York? 56 points. It's going to take us 1 extra turn, 7 turns, but that's going to give us 8 points per turn. Do you see where I'm going with this? The next subsystem is train tickets. Now let's apply some probability theory and create a color strategy. In Ticket to Ride, certain colors are more valuable than others based on the value that we place on longer tracks, longer routes. But how do we determine which colors to prioritize? Well, enter some probability theory. By analyzing the frequency of each color in the deck and its importance for completing those longer tickets, we can create a strategic hierarchy of colors. So this not only guides our card selection, but also allows us to deny crucial colors to our opponents. In Ticket to Ride, the deck of train cards consists of various colors, each representing different network paths on the game board. Some colors are more prevalent than others on the game board, and their importance varies depending on the length and location of the routes you're trying to aim to complete. By leveraging probability theory, we can strategically prioritize which colors to collect based on the frequency and relevance to our objectives. While the value we place on each color changes as the game state evolves, let's do simple visual cues at the start of the game based on that destination ticket that you selected. Let's use LA to New York City destination ticket as the example. So what we know is that based on the previous information is that the longer path going north past Helena, Duluth, Toronto and Montreal is the best value. With that strategy in mind, what value order do we have? My strategic hierarchy would now be pink, again based on those longer routes and the amount of train tickets that I'm going to need to collect. Followed by orange, followed by blue, because there's going to be just a single track, so that's going to be an important route. Then it'll be white, then it'll be yellow. So let's summarize. You know your destination ticket at the start of the game. Analyze what is going to be that longest, most efficient, most effective path. From there, look at the colors, identify what is going to be the most important for you, and create a hierarchy in your head of what you want to collect. Now, lastly, let's consider wild locomotives in our planning. Probability theory aids in decision making when choosing between drawing from the face-up cards or the face-down deck. While drawing from the face-up cards provides immediate access to specific colors, as per our hierarchy plan we just did for LA to New York, it comes at the cost of potentially valuable wild cards. Probability theory will help us assess that risk and reward for each of these options, helping us make, the most informed overall decisions to help our strategy. The idea that completing tickets is essential for victory is a common misconception amongst players. While fulfilling tickets can indeed contribute to a higher score, it's not the sole determinant of success in this game. So here's why. Firstly, it's crucial to understand the concept of game theory in Ticket to Ride. Game theory involves analysing those strategic interactions between players and making decisions based on the potential outcomes of those interactions. In the context of Ticket to Ride, being the player who's going to end that game first holds significant strategic value. Let's illustrate this with an example. Imagine you're playing Ticket to Ride and have been strategically building your routes while keeping an eye on the remaining trade cards in your deck. You notice that you're in a favourable position to end the game by completing a critical route on your next turn. By doing so, you're not only preventing your opponents from completing their tickets, but also securing an additional turn for yourself. The key is always to be one turn ahead of your opponents. Moreover, focusing solely on completing tickets may lead to tunnel vision where players overlook other strategic opportunities that could ultimately secure victory. By only prioritizing the ending of the game over your ticket completion, players are going to adapt and dynamically just change the game state in front of them. You're going to capitalize as the game goes on. In essence, while completing tickets can be advantageous, it's not the only path to victory in Ticket to Ride. Understanding these principles of game theory and strategically aiming to be the first player to end the game is going to give you that competitive edge, and remember, keeping you one step in front of your opponents. The next subsystem is your network paths between your cities. So let's discuss the longest route. In Ticket to Ride, the longest route refers to the continuous path of connected train routes that spans the greatest number of segments across the game board. Securing the longest route isn't just about scoring these extra points. It's a strategic move rooted in game theory. By claiming the longest route, you not only gain additional points, but you also deny your opponents those points. This is actually a 20-point turnaround. This tip doesn't even need to come from some smart maths whiz. Look, this is a common sense approach, but sometimes people new to the game ignore this at their own peril. This is a crucial aspect of game theory known as zero-sum gain, where one player's gain is directly offset by another player's loss. So in essence, by securing the longest route, you not only benefit yourself, but you also hinder your opponent's progress, putting you in a more favorable position to win. The next advanced tip is strategic blocking. This happens naturally in most games without even trying, but this is actually a valid strategy employed especially in higher player games or tight maps in Ticket to Ride like Nordic countries, which is aimed at smaller player counts. So let's discuss some tips for executing this strategy effectively. Now, first and foremost, timing is key, and I cannot stress that enough. Look for opportunities to strike when your opponents are least expecting it. There is crucial cities and choke points that can be identified by watching the tickets they collect and the train path they are forming. But don't play too defensively. While blocking cities can certainly disrupt your opponent's plans, it can also leave you vulnerable if you're not careful. Make sure to fortify your own routes and secure alternative connections to mitigate that impact of any potential blocks to yourself. And lastly, I'll just say stay adaptable. The game board is constantly evolving and your opponent's strategies will change accordingly. Keep a close eye on their movements and be prepared to adjust your plans on the fly. So how do we understand what actually are the best cities to block? Well, again, let's rely on a bit of math to help us. Betweenness centrality. This measures the extent to which a node or a city lies on the shortest paths between other nodes in that network. In Ticket to Ride USA, cities with high betweenness centrality are those with which many of the shortest paths between them will pass. Blocking these cities can disrupt the flow of routes and connectivity across the map. Here are 4 cities in Ticket to Ride USA with high betweenness centrality. Firstly, Chicago. This is a central hub with numerous connections to cities in the East, West, and Midwest. Next, what about Denver? This will serve as a gateway between the Western and Midwestern regions on the map. Routes passing through Denver will connect cities in the West and Midwest, giving that a high betweenness centrality. Next, Salt Lake City. This is another critical connection point between the West and Midwest. Routes passing through Salt Lake City will connect those West Coast to the Midwest and beyond. And lastly, what about Pittsburgh? Strategically located in the eastern portion of the map and serves as a key link between those eastern seaboard cities and the Midwestern cities. So, precious train tickets. At the start of the game, do you choose the face-up pile or do you choose to draw from the top of the deck? Well, the answer can actually be both. These are the main tips to know when it comes to selecting your train tickets. Now, for the most part, at the start of the game, you always want to draw from the top of the deck. You have lots of chances of drawing wild locomotive cards and your opponents will not actually know that you have those locomotives in your hand. It's all about efficiency. Now, when can it be advantageous to draw from the face-up pile early in the game? Well, remember that earlier tip we talked about color prioritization? Well, in your head, you already know that hierarchy of colors. If you identify an opponent stockpiling colors that you see high up on your hierarchy, potentially grabbing them when you see them, because maybe your opponent's actually going for the same routes as you. Remember, this game is all about that efficiency. You do not want to waste any turns taking cards you do not need. Well, early in the game, it pays to draw blindly, well, keeping an eye on your card count and how close are you getting to the full complement of cards in that particular color that you will require. So now you want to switch to prioritizing cards in the face-up pile to ensure you don't go over your maximum allocation needed because you do not want to waste any single turns. In larger player games, don't be afraid to hoard cards if you know you will use them. Remember, there is only 12 cards of each color. If you have 8 of them in your hand, well, there is only 4 more remaining for all of the other players. Always know your calculations. To summarize everything from these 7 advanced strategies in this video. Firstly, keep longer and higher value destination cards. Maximum efficiency and maximum effectiveness per turn. Calculate the path of your destination based on the value per turn, not the value of the ticket. Understand your ticket color hierarchy. Identify the optimum time to take key routes, potentially blocking your opponent, forcing them to take those extra turns. Keeping your opponent away from the longer tracks and forcing them into the smaller tracks, again, making them use up valuable extra turns. You must win the longest route. And lastly, draw train cards efficiently. Never go over the number required in any color and don't waste turns on face-up wild locomotives unless you are at the point of actually finishing the game. And there you have it, 7 advanced strategies for dominating Ticket to Ride USA. By applying mathematical theory to our gameplay, we can organize our routes, prioritize our colors, and make informed decisions that lead us to victory. So if you enjoyed this advanced strategy series, please let me know by commenting below which game would you like me to break down next. And look, if you appreciated all the effort and research I went into this video, how about a cheeky little subscription to my channel just to support my efforts? So that's all I have. This was Ticket to Ride USA. I'm Hoax. This is the Bangers Project. Till next time, laters.